Financials and political capitals of the world. To the heart of innovation, this is Opportunities to Consider with your host, author, speaker, and corporate strategist, Hunter Gaylor.
Welcome everyone to another edition of Markets Hunter. I am your host, the one and only Hunter Gaylor, coming to you live today with a new guest that we have on a company that we're very excited to talk about. There's been a lot of recent press going on, so I am joined here live with the CEO of a company called GOLQ. It's Brent Sun. We're here with, he's actually the interim CEO. We're going to bring him in right now. Brent, thanks for joining me so much today, kind of in the digital studio, and to talk about GOLQ and a lot of the stuff that you're doing. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So Brent, everyone that's been on the Market Hunter show knows that when we go into these types of interviews, we like to talk directly with the management and leadership of companies because we want to hear from you. We want to hear what you're trying to do, what you're trying to build, the foundation that you're building for a company that's got some incredible volume that's recently taken place, and a lot of headlines for companies that you're acquiring. A very interesting model going into, obviously, fintech, and given your background, and we've heard some interviews from you, we really want to dive into that. So, Brent, let's just start from the beginning. Let's give us a little bit of your background and then go in what kind of led you to step into this position as interim CEO of GOLQ.
Sure. Thanks, Hunter. So without going too far back, I actually began at Bear Stearns in merger arbitrage. So mergers and acquisitions, M&A has always been my core focus. It's spanned various industries, but I worked primarily in tech, M&A back in the late 80s, early 90s, when there actually were not a lot of publicly traded tech companies. Subsequent to that, I moved out to Silicon Valley in the mid 90s and ran a venture fund in strategy advisory that focused around e-commerce, software as a service, which was in its infancy, and network attached storage. Post that, I spent 14 years in Asia, and it was along the same line. So primarily working with earlier stage tech companies, helping them through the process of getting to scale and going public. And then I was offered the opportunity to co-found and launch a fintech platform called Create App, which we launched in 2014. We went public in 2015 through a reverse merger. We've gone through several iterations on the M&A side. And last year, we spun off the fintech business that is predominantly in Asia, and that is GOLQ. So GOLQ went public through a reverse merger. We have a proper management team here. And unfortunately, the CEO, Matthew Brent, no relation, he was recruited away from us by Electronic Arts last December. He's an old friend. It was a tremendous opportunity for him. So I said, I'll step in and take over. So here I am. In the process of doing so in December, Hunter, we were introduced to a group called Gamma Ray. And for those of our viewers who have followed our news or anyone new, you will see that Gamma Ray was an acquisition that we completed last month. We did it in a short period of time. Alongside that, we are also in late stage due diligence and in the share exchange agreement for a fintech business called Nest Egg. We've got 5 other letters of intent for asset management businesses that are in geographic regions such as Australia, Middle East, primarily UAE, Singapore. So we're looking again at Southeast Asia. And so our goal by the end of this year is to do several things. On the business side, we intend to complete these acquisitions where we will have 15 billion US dollars in assets under management or assets under advisory. We will be north of 120 million in revenues. We'll be profitable. I can't give out any EBITDA numbers yet because we have to look at what the economies of scale look like combined with efficiencies that merging these together will bring. But we'll be profitable. If you look at comparable companies that are listed on NASDAQ or NYSE, you will see valuation metrics that would imply a market cap of around $600 to $800 million when we complete these. We are currently on the OTC market, although we have an active process in place for the New York Stock Exchange, Amex. The way that works, just very quickly so our viewers understand, you don't apply first. What you do is you begin the questionnaire that is specific to your company. You have a few rounds back and forth with NYSE. Post that, they put you in with what they call market reg. If you meet the qualifications, then they put you into application phase. The whole process takes anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks. We've just completed questionnaire phase. We do meet all the requirements except for one, which will be accomplished upon the uplisting.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's where we are. We're
well, one of the things when Brent, when we've been following the company and it's come to our attention that it's obviously an incredible business model. We do like the global aspect of what GoLogic has the potentiality to do. I just want to take up a recent press release that I think of a lot of our viewers that are starting to look that came out today. And I just want to highlight one piece here, which I think is incredible here. A global provider and mobile fintech solutions for digital transformation and consumer data analytics, was, quote, unstoppable, right? Unstoppable after several successful transactions. Now, I love hearing things like that because if you were successful the first time, okay, great. You're successful the second time, even better. But you're on track to close a number of companies based on, just what the information that the public has. Do you think that those are going to, from your professional position that you're sitting in, you don't have to get into details, do you think that those are going to go smoothly and you'll be able to meet the right timelines for shareholders to be aware that these you're not running into hiccups, but you're able to acquire these in a very systematic and strategic way?
I do, and just to provide a little framework around that, Hunter. The reason I feel that way is because the asset management businesses that we are in the process with, they are all audited and they are all regulated. And so as a matter of their course of business, they go through an annual audit. The regulators vet them. They all have very robust data rooms for the due diligence. On the fintech companies, those are easy as well because they're a little bit earlier stage, but being able to vet the tech and IP and also the addressable market, very readily done. Our team's done this for, it's been 9 years now. So it's smooth. It's super smooth.
And it seems that you have all the right systems in place as interim CEOs that whoever steps in is the position, as long as they don't touch anything and mess with the dials, right? It's kind of smooth sailing with the model that you built. And that's, I think, incredible for a lot of people that are interested in doing their due diligence. And from the market hunter's perspective, I'll tell you a little bit about our audience. Our audience are very strategic investors. They're not retail investors. They're very strategic investors. And they look at 3 to 5 year growth trajectories of companies. They look at companies that it's buy and hold 3 to 5 years. They look at the fundamentals, the management, the experience, the board, who's coming in to assist with we'll call it the market makers that come in. So there's a lot of strategic advisement and things that are going on and that we look at. And what we're very impressed is obviously a lot of the stuff that GoLogic has been able to do, especially the fact that you're interim running another company as well. So that's props to you. I'd like to dive in and just get a kind of a global market viewpoint from you, Brent. Obviously, very heavily focused in Asia. Okay. Now starting some, conversations around what it looks like in the Middle East. Perhaps I would assume there's some overlay into Europe. Talk to us about the firms in the Middle East. Talk to us about what the European market may look like. and then talk to us, about the U.S. market.
Sure. So the two parts of business that will be focused around will be asset management, and the other side will be fintech products that are focused on a younger demographic, predominantly millennials and Gen Z. What you will see globally on the asset management side, at least with developed markets, and certainly I think some of the emerging markets as well, is that there are very deep pools of capital. Now, not a lot of people would be familiar with Singapore, for example, or the UAE, United Arab Emirates. But if you look at what are called the sovereign funds, which is actually those countries'
Right.
Pool of investable assets that come from a variety of means. Those are some of the biggest in the world. The Singaporean sovereign fund is massive. They are and in addition to that, they are some of the savviest technology investors in the world. They co-invest with the Japanese. They co-invest with the folks out of Silicon Valley like Kleiner Perkins and Benchmark. Mm-hmm. And so there's a level of sophistication, and there are deep pools of investment for initial and certainly follow-ons. So on the asset management side, we find that to be true in any of the markets we're in, whether it's Australia, Singapore, Southeast Asia, and then United Arab Emirates, the Gulf region, US, of course. When you look at some of the fintech platforms for that younger demographic, the opportunity does exist here in the US. If you look at Nest Egg, for example, mm-hmm. They're targeting younger savers and investors. But if you also look at some of the emerging markets and certainly some of the frontier markets, that's actually a bigger growth opportunity, because you'll see younger people who are used to doing everything on the digital device. And so if you've got fintech products on that device, you'll check off all the boxes in terms of, we've got 15 billion in assets under management, over 100 million in revenues. All that's great, but I think young people want to see, can I get to it here? Can I use this? And so if you've got both, then I think you certainly have an excellent market opportunity.
Well, and one of the things too, Brent, not to be a fanboy of your company, right? But what I will say is someone that comes out of the fintech space, right? I mean, I had co-founded a company called Howler. We were in the pioneering the mobile advertising space. We saw the emergence of the companies when PNC Bank or ING Direct was trying to get into what is now Cash App and some of these other things. So we've obviously seen, and I check the box of the millennial market, it's all now driven. And we're seeing a lot of stuff now with Twitter and the emergence of Twitter's relationship with eToro. So we're seeing the convergence of an entire globalized platform that goes not just with trading, asset management, but we're also seeing the communication being more in real time, where we're now having Twitter Spaces live chatting about companies just like yourself or GTII or FNRG or any of these other companies where people are more actively involved because they have their information right here on their device and they're getting access to conversations like what you and I are having right now. So I definitely see from a market hunter's perspective, where the future is going from a mobile fintech perspective, and then being able to acquire those assets under management from a global perspective, especially when we look at these new trading platforms coming on, which gives us global access to liquidity. It's very, very interesting play. I know we only have you for a few more minutes today, but in the time that we have, Brent, I'd like to get our audience to understand what your perspective is on some of these new regulatory changes that are going on with regards to social media, okay, and mobile fintech and kind of the convergence of the two. Obviously, there's a global market. But if I have the ability to participate somehow in a Singaporean startup, or a Singaporean startup has the ability to, or fund has the ability to invest in, say, a startup company that I have, where are you seeing from either an acquisition perspective? Is it the Nest Eggs of the world? Or what are some of the other companies that maybe you or management has identified of, hey, it would be really cool if we could get this, or it could be really cool if we could get that?
Sure. That's a fantastic point, and I'm glad you brought that up. excitement, I think, is readily available when you look at the stories that are out there having to do with emerging fintech and the way that we, or shall I say, individual investors are able to have access to products or services in markets outside of their own is tremendous. What we're seeing a lot of, especially in Southeast Asia, especially in the Gulf region, are companies that are founded by the younger demographic. But what we're seeing in concert with that is they are bringing in additional management and board expertise earlier on in the process to help them navigate. Because one thing that I think is overarching, regardless of the industry or the opportunity, is the cycles, right? It's easy to go public, to raise money, to make noise and be heard in a great market. But very few are nimble and able in down markets, and even fewer are nimble and able coming out of a bad market. I'm sorry, coming out of a good market, going into a bad market, because unless you've actually had the direct experience, it's something that a textbook really can't teach you.
That's right.
You've been involved in startups,
Yeah.
you see these cycles. So what I think we're going to see over the next year, coming out of this downtrend we've seen, is going to open up tremendous opportunities for smaller companies that desire to go public and didn't, and can be acquired at valuations that our current shareholders and any new shareholders will be thrilled about, because they'll be accretive, they'll be at low valuations, and those will catch the uptrend. And so, what does that look like in terms of pipeline? We've actually looked at over 115 companies just in the past 3 months. So there's a lot out there.
Well,
a lot of good stuff.
And that's great to hear. I think a lot of our people, they look at, okay, if they're executing now, what is the execution going to look like 3 quarters from now, 4 quarters from now, a year, 2 years from now? And that's always important because, basic business school 101, definition of a corporation, return shareholder value. And that's what we look like, or what we look for when we're communicating a message as executives to the shareholders. Hey, we are doing the due diligence. We are looking at the companies. And by the way, for just a market point, NASDAQ has been down, okay? Over the past couple of months, we've seen kind of a downward trajectory. Maybe we'll have a rebound, but the fact that you are running and you're going to be listing on the New York Stock Exchange, hopefully in the very near future, one of the things that I think is very incredible, Brent, and this is just me kind of looking at my notes here, you're already profitable. So when you're looking at the fundamentals, we should be looking at companies that are trading, at a much higher valuation, right? Because you are in a public vehicle. And so that is something that we're looking at, especially startups now. The VC market, and we just saw this with Silicon Valley Bank, right? It's not the same VC market that it was a mere 4 or 5 years ago. The landscape has changed. So the fact that you're now bringing about a platform, or should I say a vehicle, I think is going to give a lot of hope to these emerging technology companies and startups that now could be placed into a vehicle that will be able to trade at, just as industry average. And you've traded in the markets before. When you're public, you trade at some points a 35x time valuation than what a standard VC would give you. So and it's a lot easier to raise money, especially in the markets that we're dealing with now. People want the liquidity. So, kudos to that. In closing, Brent, if people want to follow the company, where do you recommend they go? Is it the GOLogic.com? What's your social media handles, if you have any right now? I know you're kind of being, you're strategic in the way you're developing right now. But if people wanted to follow, what's the best way for them outside of going to Markets Hunter and following me on Twitter and everything like that, and subscribing and getting the updates that I'll get from you? But where can they go to get more information and follow the developments?
Sure. So GOLogic.com is our URL. Our website is being constantly updated. We have news that comes out there. We will be updating that again this coming quarter as we close these acquisitions. So I would say that that's probably the first stop. Secondly, I think looking at OTC markets, of course, and then doing a deeper dive into fintech in general. There's so many tools available. I think your viewers especially are probably savvy enough to know where to look. Whether it's Barron's or some of the other tech-centric publications like Wired, to determine information that's specific to fintech.
Perfect. And I think that's good. So Brent, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And we look forward to having you back on the show. We want to keep following the company. We're looking at this as a long-term play. We're obviously a fan of it. And so we're going to keep following the markets, and we're going to keep making sure that the conversation is being had and it's being presented to the right people in the right markets that can make the right decisions. So thank you so much, Brent, for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Hunter.
Okay. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we just ended our conversation with Brent, who's the CEO of GOLQ, incredible company. They're looking into the future. This is the future of mobile fintech. I mean, really, as they're acquiring assets under management, we're going to be really following this company along. So I encourage you to go take a look at their website. When this comes out, all the links will be located in the descriptions below. Follow it on Twitter. Follow us on StockTwits. We're going to post all this information out for all of our audiences. And if you're on our mailing list that goes to all the family offices for all of our long-term investors that like more of the long form, we'll also be putting this on Spotify, and we're also on iHeartRadio. So we really are growing our audience base. And so if you like these interviews and you like me on top of everything else that we're putting out there and, our organizations, if you like this media platform, continue to like, subscribe, and share across all the platforms so we can get the message out about these companies. We're not licensed financial advisors, even though, I'm a corporate strategist and I do talk with a lot of these companies and work with a lot of the companies. What we do is we want you to hear from the CEOs. We want to hear about their conversations from the lens of how I look at companies and how a lot of the people that ask me questions want to look at companies. So we really appreciate and thank all of our CEOs that watch, and especially Brent, who we just had on, for giving us his time and taking the time to explain his vision. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, he's just the interim CEO. So we're going to see where this company evolves, and they are targeting the millennial group. That is our group. That is what we understand the best. And so we look forward to it. And we like being that bridge between, the baby boomer generation and the millennials, and now, the next generations coming that are now stuck on this device all the time. So we want to keep bringing you conversations like that. So, and a lot more opportunities to consider. And once again, thank you so much for subscribing and following along. This will be everywhere. So make sure you stay tuned for another episode of Markets Hunter.